Commander Harry Foster's heart raced as he locked eyes with the female Ferengi warrior. Her energy blade hummed menacingly, its glow illuminating the alien landscape around them. Foster, unarmed and alone, knew he had only one chance to survive this encounter. Without hesitation, he closed the distance between them. The crash of the escape pod still echoed in Foster's ears. Moments ago, he'd been aboard the interstellar warship Titan's Fist, coordinating an emergency evacuation as a Ferengi battlecruiser rained destruction upon them in the Orion Nebula. Now, he found himself face-to-face with the enemy on an unknown moon's surface. As Foster approached, the Ferengi warrior's eyes widened in shock. Her blade wavered, confusion evident in her stance. Foster seized the opportunity, his years of close-quarters combat training kicking in. With a swift, precise movement, he disarmed her, the energy blade clattering to the rocky ground. The Ferengi stumbled backward, her expression a mix of disbelief and disgust. Foster realized he had inadvertently violated a fundamental Ferengi custom. Physical contact between genders was strictly forbidden in their culture. "I'm Commander Harry Foster," he said, keeping his voice steady. "And you are?" The Ferengi warrior glared at him, her antenna twitching with agitation. "Vox!" she spat. "How dare you touch me, human?" Foster quickly secured Vox's weapons, then activated the emergency beacon from his escape pod. He knew both human and Ferengi forces would detect the signal, setting the stage for a potential confrontation. As the alien sun dipped below the horizon, Foster assessed their situation. They were stranded on a harsh, unfamiliar moon with unknown dangers. Survival would require cooperation, despite their differences. "Listen, Vox," Foster began. "I know we're enemies, but right now, we need each other to survive. Truce?" Vox's eyes narrowed, but she nodded reluctantly. "Truce, for now." They set to work establishing a defensive perimeter around their makeshift camp. Foster took charge of constructing shelters from the wreckage of their escape pods, while Vox scouted the immediate area for potential threats. As Foster worked, he felt Vox's eyes on him. She observed his movements with a mixture of curiosity and wariness, noting the differences in human and Ferengi physiology. Foster's strength and endurance seemed to both impress and unsettle her. "Your physical capabilities are unexpected," Vox commented, her voice tinged with reluctant admiration. Foster smiled. "Humans are full of surprises. Maybe we're not so different after all." As night fell, the distant rumble of spacecraft entering the moon's atmosphere reached their ears. Foster and Vox exchanged glances, knowing that their respective rescue teams were racing to reach them first. In the growing darkness, Foster and Vox stood side by side, an unlikely pair united by circumstance. The human soldier who dared to get close and the alien warrior girl shocked by his actions now faced an uncertain future together on this alien world. As the alien sun crept above the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep purple and orange, Commander Harry Foster and Vox emerged from their makeshift shelters. The night had passed without incident, but the harsh reality of their situation settled upon them, like the morning dew on the alien vegetation surrounding their camp. Foster stretched, his muscles aching from the previous day's exertion. He glanced at Vox, who stood a few feet away, her antenna twitching as she scanned their surroundings. "We need to fortify our position," he said, breaking the silence. Vox nodded curtly, her eyes never leaving the alien landscape. "Agreed, but with what?" Foster surveyed the crash sites of their escape pods. "We'll use the wreckage. It's not ideal, but it's all we've got." As they worked, Foster couldn't help but notice Vox's hesitation whenever he approached. She maintained a careful distance, her movements stiff and guarded. Despite their truce, the cultural divide between them remained a palpable barrier. Hours passed as they constructed a more permanent shelter. Foster's military training proved invaluable as he directed their efforts, while Vox's nimble fingers and quick mind allowed her to solve problems Foster hadn't even considered. As the shelter took shape, Vox's wariness began to give way to curiosity. "Your physical endurance is impressive," she admitted grudgingly, watching as Foster hefted a large piece of metal into place. Foster wiped sweat from his brow. "Thanks. You're not so bad yourself." Those Ferengi reflexes are something else. A hint of pride flickered across Vox's face before she quickly suppressed it. Their moment of camaraderie was interrupted by a distant rumble. Both turned their eyes to the sky, where multiple ships were breaking through the atmosphere. "Looks like the cavalry's arrived," Foster muttered, shielding his eyes against the glare. Vox tensed beside him. "For you, perhaps. My people may not be so understanding of our arrangement." As the ships drew closer, two distinct groups became apparent. Foster recognized the sleek lines of the USS Horizon, undoubtedly led by Captain Sarah Parker. The other group, with their asymmetrical designs and garish colors, could only be Ferengi vessels. "We need to prepare," Foster said, his mind racing. "They'll be following the emergency beacon." Vox nodded, her expression torn between relief and apprehension. As they gathered their meager supplies, Foster noticed a dark opening in the rocky outcropping near their camp. "Wait," he said, grabbing Vox's attention. "Look at that." They approached the opening cautiously. It was a cave entrance, previously hidden by shadows and vegetation. "Should we investigate?" Vox asked, her voice tinged with both curiosity and suspicion. Foster weighed their options. "Quickly, it might provide shelter if things go south." They entered the cave, their eyes adjusting to the dim light. As they ventured deeper, something caught Foster's eye. He bent down, brushing dust from a small object embedded in the cave floor. It was metallic, with intricate patterns etched into its surface. "Vox," he called, his voice hushed. "Look at this." The Ferengi warrior crouched beside him, her eyes widening. "This isn't natural," she whispered. "It's manufactured." They exchanged a look of mutual understanding. This was no ordinary moon. As they delved further into the cave system, they uncovered more artifacts, each more advanced than the last. The implications were staggering. The sound of approaching vehicles snapped them back to reality. They emerged from the cave to see two groups converging on their position. Captain Sarah Parker's team arrived first, their weapons drawn but not aimed. "Commander Foster," Parker called out, her relief evident. "Are you all right?" Before Foster could respond, the Ferengi squad appeared, led by a corpulent figure Foster assumed was Daimon Brack. The Ferengi leader's eyes locked onto Vox, his expression a mix of anger and suspicion. "Return our warrior at once, humans," Brack demanded, his voice shrill. "This kidnapping will not stand." Captain Parker raised her hands in a placating gesture. "There's been no kidnapping, Daimon. We've only just arrived ourselves." Foster stepped forward, acutely aware of the tension crackling in the air. "Captain Parker, Daimon Brack," he said, nodding to each in turn. "I believe we have a situation that requires our immediate attention." He gestured towards the cave entrance. "We've discovered something that could change everything. I propose a joint exploration of the cave system." His suggestion was met with stunned silence. Vox, to everyone's surprise, spoke up. "The human speaks truth. What we've found, it could benefit both our peoples." Daimon Brack's face contorted with rage. "You dare side with this human? Have you forgotten your place, female?" Before Vox could retort, the ground beneath them shuddered. The tremor started small but quickly intensified. Cracks spiderwebbed across the moon's surface, the sound of splitting rock drowning out all else. Foster reacted instinctively. He lunged for Vox as the ground gave way beneath her feet, his hand closing around her wrist. With a mighty heave, he pulled her to safety, their bodies colliding as they tumbled away from the widening fissure. For a moment they lay there, Foster's arms still around Vox. Her eyes were wide with shock, not just from the near-death experience, but from the forbidden physical contact. Foster quickly released her, aware of the cultural line he had crossed. "The caves!" Captain Parker shouted over the din. "Everyone, inside!" Human and Ferengi alike scrambled for the cave entrance as the moon's surface continued to fracture around them. Foster and Vox led the way, guiding the others deeper into the cave system where they had discovered the artifacts. As the groups ventured further underground, the tremors subsided. The artifacts they passed grew more numerous and complex, eliciting gasps of wonder from both humans and Ferengi. Foster and Vox found themselves at the head of the group, their shared experience having forged an unspoken bond. They navigated the twisting passages with growing confidence, deciphering clues that others missed. At last, they emerged into a vast chamber. Before them stood a massive door, its surface covered in intricate symbols that seemed to pulse with an inner light. As Foster and Vox approached, the symbols began to glow brighter, responding to their presence. The assembled humans and Ferengi watched in awe as Foster and Vox stood before the ancient door, united in their curiosity and trepidation. Whatever lay beyond, they knew it had the power to reshape the future of both their species. Foster glanced at Vox, seeing his own mix of excitement and fear reflected in her eyes. He nodded almost imperceptibly, and together they reached out to touch the glowing surface of the door. Door. As their fingers made contact with the ancient surface, a surge of energy pulsed through the symbols. The massive door shuddered and began to slide open with a low, reverberating groan. Foster and Vox exchanged a brief glance before stepping back, allowing the door to fully reveal what lay beyond. As the opening widened, a soft, blue-tinged light spilled out, illuminating their awestruck faces. "By the divine treasury," Vox whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. Before them stretched a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. The walls were lined with sleek, unfamiliar technology that hummed with latent power. Consoles and devices of unknown purpose filled the space, their surfaces adorned with the same intricate symbols they had seen on the door. Captain Parker stepped forward, her voice filled with amazement. "Commander Foster, what have you found?" Foster shook his head, still taking in the sight. "I'm not sure, Captain, but I think we've stumbled onto something big." Daimon Brack pushed his way to the front, his beady eyes darting around the chamber. This could be worth a fortune," he exclaimed, barely containing his excitement. "Hold on, Daimon," Foster said, raising a hand. "We don't know what any of this does. We should proceed with caution." The combined human and Ferengi teams cautiously entered the chamber, their earlier hostilities temporarily forgotten in the face of this unprecedented discovery. Foster took the lead, his military training kicking in as he scanned for potential threats. As they ventured deeper into the room, Foster's attention was drawn to a central console that seemed more elaborate than the others. Its surface was alive with pulsing lights and shifting symbols. "Vox," he called, gesturing for her to join him. "What do you make of this?" The Ferengi warrior approached, her antenna twitching with curiosity. "It appears to be some sort of control interface," she observed, leaning in for a closer look. As Foster reached out to examine the console, his hand accidentally brushed against a glowing panel. The chamber suddenly came alive with light, and a massive holographic projection materialized above them. The assembled humans and Ferengi gasped in unison as the hologram took shape. It depicted a humanoid species with elongated craniums and iridescent skin. The alien figure began to speak in a melodious language, unlike anything they had ever heard. "It's some kind of recorded message," Captain Parker said, her voice hushed with awe. As they watched, the hologram shifted, showing scenes of an advanced civilization. Enormous cities floated in the sky, and sleek spacecraft effortlessly traversed the stars. "The Zarthans," Vox murmured, her eyes fixed on the projection. Foster turned to her, surprised. "You know of them?" Vox shook her head. "No, but look." She pointed to a series of symbols scrolling beneath the images. "I recognize that as their name from the artifacts we found earlier." The hologram continued, showing the Zarthans facing a cataclysmic event. Their world was torn apart by massive energy disturbances, forcing them to flee. The final image showed a group of Zarthans sealing away their technology in hidden vaults across the galaxy. As the projection faded, a new set of symbols appeared, glowing brightly. Foster leaned in, trying to decipher their meaning. "It's a message," he said slowly. "Something about trials and successors?" Before they could discuss further, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. The tremors quickly intensified, sending loose equipment clattering to the floor. "The seismic activity," Captain Parker shouted over the growing rumble. "It's getting worse." Daimon Brack turned to his crew, panic evident in his voice. "Back to the ships! We must leave this cursed moon!" "No!" Foster called out, his eyes locked on the central console. "We might be able to use this technology to stabilize the moon, but we need to work together." Captain Parker nodded grimly. "Agreed. Damon, I propose a temporary alliance. Our survival depends on it." Brack hesitated, his greed warring with his sense of self-preservation. Finally, he gave a curt nod. "Very well, but this changes nothing between us humans." As the tremors intensified, Foster turned to the console. Its interface was complex, clearly designed for the unique physiology of the Zarthans. "It needs 2 operators," he realized, studying the layout, working in perfect sync. Without hesitation, he turned to Vox. "I need your help. We're the only ones who've had any success with this technology so far." Vox's antenna twitched nervously. "But the physical contact, it's forbidden." Foster met her gaze, his expression serious. "I know it goes against your beliefs, but right now it's our only chance. Trust me." For a moment, Vox remained frozen, her cultural conditioning warring with the dire reality of their situation. Then, with a deep breath, she stepped up to the console beside Foster. "Guide me," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious discomfort. Foster nodded, quickly explaining the basics of hand-eye coordination as he understood it from the alien interface. Their hands moved across the console, occasionally brushing against each other as they manipulated the controls. Vox's breath caught at each contact, her entire body tense. Yet as they worked together, she found herself relaxing, her movements becoming more fluid and synchronized with Foster's. The console sprang to life under their combined efforts. Energy pulsed from the chamber, spreading throughout the moon's core. Gradually, the violent tremors began to subside. "It's working," Captain Parker exclaimed, watching readouts on her handheld scanner. "The moon is stabilizing." As the immediate danger passed, Foster and Vox stepped back from the console, both breathing heavily from the intensity of their shared experience. They looked at each other, a new understanding passing between them. The successful operation of the Zarthon technology shifted the dynamics between the two groups. Captain Parker and Daimon Brack huddled with their respective teams, discussing the implications of what they had just witnessed. "This power," Brack muttered, his eyes gleaming with avarice. "We must learn to control it." Parker overheard him and frowned. "This isn't about control, Daimon. This technology could benefit both our peoples if we work together." As the team set up a base camp within the chamber, Foster and Vox found themselves at the center of attention. Their unique ability to operate the alien technology made them invaluable to both sides. Daimon Brack watched them with narrowed eyes, noting Vox's increasing comfort around the humans, particularly Foster. He pulled aside his second-in-command, whispering furiously, "We must separate them. The female is becoming corrupted by human influence." Meanwhile, Captain Parker approached Foster and Vox. "Excellent work, both of you," she said, smiling. "I believe our best course of action is to continue exploring this chamber and attempt to decipher more of the Zarthan's message, particularly the part about trials." Foster nodded in agreement. "We'll need to work together, humans and Ferengi. Vox and I seem to have the best understanding of the technology so far." As preparations began for further exploration, Foster took Vox aside to a quiet corner of the chamber. "Are you all right?" he asked, noticing her conflicted expression. Vox's antenna twitched uncertainly. I'm not sure. Everything I've been taught about interacting with other species, about physical contact, it's all being challenged." Foster nodded sympathetically. "I know it's not easy, but what we did today, working together, that's the essence of partnership and teamwork for humans. Sometimes, breaking down barriers leads to incredible achievements." Vox pondered his words, her worldview shifting. As they rejoined the others, she found herself looking at Foster in a new light, both thrilled and terrified by the possibilities that lay ahead. The chamber buzzed with activity as both teams prepared for their first foray into unraveling the mysteries of the Zarthon trials. Foster and Vox stood at the forefront, their unlikely alliance now the key to unlocking the power of an ancient civilization. As they faced the unknown together, the boundaries between them, physical, emotional, and cultural, continued to blur, promising further challenges and revelations in the trials to come. Come! The chamber hummed with anticipation as the combined human and Ferengi teams prepared for their first encounter with a Zarthon trial. Foster and Vox stood side by side at the central console, their earlier collaboration having forged an unexpected connection between them. "Are you ready?" Foster asked, his voice low and steady. Vox's antenna twitched nervously, but her eyes shone with willpower. "As ready as I'll ever be, Commander." They placed their hands on the console, their movements now synchronized with practiced ease. The chamber responded immediately, pulsing with energy as a holographic projection materialized around them. Captain Parker's eyes widened in amazement. "It's a maze!" The holographic construct filled the chamber, its translucent walls shimmering with an otherworldly light. Within its confines, they could see simulated obstacles and dangers awaiting them. Daimon Brack scowled, his beady eyes darting between the maze and the human Ferengi pair at the console. "How do we know this isn't some human trick?" "It's not a trick, Daimon," Foster responded firmly. "This is the trial the Zarthans left for us. Vox and I will enter the maze together. Our combined skills give us the best chance of success." Before Brack could protest further, Foster and Vox stepped into the holographic construct. The maze solidified around them, cutting them off from the rest of the group. As they navigated the twisting corridors, the differences in their abilities became apparent. Foster's human strength allowed him to push through physical barriers, while Vox's Ferengi agility helped them avoid hidden traps. "Watch out!" Vox called, pulling Foster back just as a section of the floor gave way beneath him. Foster nodded gratefully. "Good catch. I didn't even see that coming." They pressed on, their teamwork growing more fluid with each obstacle they overcame. The rest of the teams watched in awe as Foster and Vox made their way deeper into the maze, their progress displayed on the chamber's walls. Suddenly, they found themselves in a narrow corridor. The walls began to close in, the space shrinking rapidly around them. "We're not going to make it," Vox exclaimed, her eyes wide with panic. Acting on instinct, Foster wrapped his arms around Vox, pulling her close against his chest. "Hold on!" he shouted as he maneuvered them through the tightening passage. Vox gasped at the sudden intimate contact, her Ferengi sensibilities reeling. Yet as they squeezed through the narrow space, she found herself clinging to Foster, her body responding in ways she had never experienced before. They emerged on the other side, breathless and still entwined. For a moment they stood frozen, the intensity of their shared experience hanging between them. Vox slowly disentangled herself, her antenna quivering with conflicting emotions. "We should keep moving," she said, her voice unsteady. Foster nodded, equally affected by their close encounter. "Right, let's finish this." They pressed on, their movements now charged with a new awareness of each other. As they approached the center of the maze, a small crystalline device appeared before them, pulsating with energy. "This must be it," Foster said, reaching out to touch the device. As his fingers made contact, the maze dissolved around them. They found themselves back in the chamber, the crystalline object now floating above the central console. "They did it!" Captain Parker exclaimed, her face beaming with pride. Daimon Brack pushed forward, his eyes fixed on the Zarthon device. "What is it? What does it do?" Before anyone could respond, the crystal emitted a burst of energy. A holographic star map filled the chamber, pinpointing the locations of other Zarthon outposts across the galaxy. The chamber erupted into chaos as both humans and Ferengi realized the implications of this discovery. Arguments broke out as each side laid claim to the Zarthan legacy. "This technology belongs to the Ferengi Alliance," Brack shouted, his face contorted with greed and anger. "It belongs to no one," Captain Parker countered. "This is a discovery that could benefit all our peoples if we work together." As the situation deteriorated, Foster saw the Zarthan systems beginning to react to the conflict. Warning lights flashed across the consoles, and a low, ominous hum filled the air. "Stop!" he shouted, silencing the arguing groups. "The chamber is shutting down. If we don't act now, we could lose access to everything." Foster turned to Vox, extending his hand. "We need to stabilize the systems, together." Vox hesitated for a moment, acutely aware of the disapproving glares from her Ferengi compatriots. Then, with a deep breath, she took Foster's hand and moved with him to the central console. Their fingers danced across the alien interface, working in perfect harmony to bring the chamber back under control. As the system stabilized, Foster turned to address the group. "This technology is beyond any one species," he said firmly. "I propose a joint expedition to the nearest Zarthian outpost, a team of both humans and Ferengi, led by myself and Vox." His suggestion was met with an uproar. Daimon Brack's face turned a deep shade of orange as he sputtered in outrage. "Unacceptable! This is clearly a ploy to steal our secrets." Even Captain Parker looked uncertain. "Commander, while I appreciate the spirit of cooperation, there are serious security concerns to consider." As the arguments intensified, Vox suddenly stepped forward. "I volunteer for this expedition," she announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. A stunned silence fell over the chamber. Vox's fellow Ferengi stared at her in shock, their antennae twitching in disbelief. "Vox, you can't be serious," one of them hissed. "You would betray your own people for these humans?" Vox stood her ground, though her antenna betrayed her inner turmoil. "This isn't about betrayal. It's about progress. Commander Foster and I have proven that we can work together effectively. This partnership could be the key to unlocking the Zarthian secrets." As the implications of Vox's declaration sank in, the ancient chamber once again began to react to the emotional turmoil. The crystalline device pulsed erratically, and the star map flickered ominously. Foster, recognizing the urgency of the situation, grabbed Vox's hand and pulled her back to the console. Together they worked to stabilize the systems, their movements fluid and synchronized. As the chamber settled, a tense silence fell over the group. The decision they faced now would shape not only the fate of the Zarthon technology, but potentially the future of human-Ferengi relations. Captain Parker and Daimon Brack exchanged wary glances, each weighing the risks and potential rewards of Foster's proposal. The partnership between the human commander and the Ferengi warrior had yielded unexpected results, challenging long-held assumptions on both sides. Vox, still standing close to Foster at the console, felt the weight of her decision settling upon her. She had taken a step into unknown territory, driven by a growing trust in Foster and a curiosity about the possibilities that lay beyond the rigid confines of Ferengi culture. As the teams regrouped to discuss their next move, the chamber hummed with potential energy. The Zarthon legacy awaited, promising untold power and knowledge. But the path forward remained uncertain, fraught with the challenges of bridging the vast differences between two very different species. Foster looked at Vox, seeing the conflict in her eyes. He knew that whatever came next would test not only their newfound partnership, but also the very foundations of human-Ferengi relations. The trials ahead would demand more than just physical prowess or technical skill. They would require a fundamental shift in how both species viewed each other and themselves. The tense atmosphere in the chamber slowly began to shift as Captain Parker and Daimon Brack exchanged calculating glances. The potential of the Zarthon technology was too great to ignore, and Foster's proposal for a joint expedition suddenly seemed like the only viable path forward. "Very well, Commander," Captain Parker said, her voice firm but tinged with reluctance. "We'll proceed with your plan, but I expect regular updates and full transparency throughout the mission." Daimon Brack's face contorted in a mix of frustration and greed. "Fine," he spat, his beady eyes darting between Foster and Vox. "But I want assurances that the Ferengi Alliance will receive its fair share of any discoveries." With the leadership's tentative agreement secured, Foster and Vox quickly assembled their team. Two human scientists, Dr. Elena Reeves and Dr. Marcus Chen, joined the group, along with a pair of Ferengi engineers, Grok and Lim. As they boarded the shuttle, Foster couldn't help but notice the tension radiating from the Ferengi crew members. Vox, in particular, seemed to be struggling with her decision to volunteer for the mission. Her antenna twitched nervously as she took her seat next to Foster at the control panel. "You okay?" Foster asked quietly, his eyes meeting hers. Vox nodded, her expression a mix of willpower and uncertainty. "I'm fine. Let's just focus on the mission." The shuttle lifted off, leaving the moon's atmosphere behind. As they reached open space, Foster activated the Zarthane navigation device. The small crystalline object pulsed with energy, and suddenly, a shimmering portal appeared before them. Initiating subspace corridor entry, Foster announced, his hands steady on the controls. The shuttle glided into the corridor, and the familiar starscape vanished, replaced by a swirling tunnel of light and energy. The human scientists gasped in awe, while the Ferengi engineers muttered to each other in disbelief. "Incredible," Dr. Reeves breathed, her eyes wide as she studied the sensor readings. "We're traveling at speeds beyond anything we've ever achieved before." As the journey continued, Foster and Vox found themselves working in close proximity, monitoring the Zarthan systems together. Their shoulders brushed occasionally, causing Vox to flinch each time. Foster noticed her discomfort, but said nothing, focusing instead on the task at hand. Hours passed, and the team settled into an uneasy rhythm. The human scientists engaged in excited discussions about the potential applications of Zarthon technology, while the Ferengi engineers kept to themselves, occasionally shooting suspicious glances at Foster and Vox. Suddenly, the subspace corridor began to fluctuate. The shuttle shuddered, and warning lights flashed across the control panel. "We're approaching our destination," Foster announced, his voice tense. "Prepare for exit." With a final lurch, the shuttle emerged from the corridor. Before them lay a small, unremarkable planet, its surface a mottled mix of greens and browns. "Scanning for Zarthon structures," Dr. Chen reported, his fingers flying over the sensor controls. "I've got something. There's a large complex on the northern continent." As Foster maneuvered the shuttle towards the planet, an invisible force suddenly gripped the vessel, halting their approach. "We're caught in some kind of energy field," Vox said, her antenna quivering as she analyzed the readings. "It's Zarthon in origin, but far more advanced than anything we've encountered so far." Foster's mind raced as he considered their options. His eyes fell on the Zarthon navigation device, still pulsing softly on the console. "Vox," he said, turning to his Ferengi partner, "I think we need to interface with the device directly. It might be our only way past this barrier." Vox's eyes widened in shock. "Interface? You mean a mental link?" Foster nodded grimly. "It's a risk, but I don't see any other way." The Ferengi engineers erupted in protest. "Absolutely not!" Grok shouted, his face flushed with anger. "It's a violation of everything we stand for." Vox hesitated, her antenna twitching rapidly as she weighed her options. Finally, she took a deep breath and met Foster's gaze. "I'll do it." Ignoring the continued objections from her fellow Ferengi, Vox placed her hand on the device alongside Foster's. As their fingers touched, a surge of energy coursed through them both. Foster gasped as his mind was suddenly flooded with alien sensations. He caught glimpses of Vox's memories, her childhood on Ferenginar, her training as a warrior, and her first encounters with humans. Alongside these images came a rush of unfamiliar emotions, complex and intense. Vox, for her part, found herself overwhelmed by the openness of Foster's mind. Human thoughts and feelings washed over her, raw and unfiltered. She experienced his sense of wonder at the universe, his dedication to his crew, and a growing warmth towards her that both thrilled and terrified her. As their minds merged, they found themselves communicating with the planet's defense systems. With a shared thought, they conveyed their peaceful intentions and their connection to the Zarthon legacy. The energy field dissipated, allowing the shuttle to descend towards the planet's surface. As they touched down near the alien structure, Foster and Vox broke their connection to the device. Vox stumbled, disoriented from the intense mental link. Without thinking, Foster reached out to steady her, his arms wrapping around her waist. The physical contact, combined with the lingering effects of their mental connection, sent a shockwave through Vox's body. She felt a surge of unfamiliar sensations, her skin tingling where Foster touched her. The moment passed quickly as the rest of the team prepared to disembark. As they exited the shuttle, Foster kept a supportive hand on Vox's elbow, guiding her towards the Zarthan structure. The massive building loomed before them, its sleek lines and shimmering surfaces unlike anything they had ever seen. As they approached, they found themselves facing a sealed entrance with no visible means of opening it. Foster studied the door carefully, noticing two hand-shaped indentations on its surface. It looks like it needs biometric data from two individuals, he mused. Without hesitation, he placed his hand on one of the scanners. He turned to Vox, extending his other hand in invitation. Shall we? Vox hesitated for a moment, acutely aware of the disapproving looks from Grok and Lim. Then, squaring her shoulders, she stepped forward and placed her hand in the second scanner. The door hummed to life, a soft blue light scanning their palms. Suddenly, a holographic message appeared before them, congratulating them on passing another trial and inviting them to claim the knowledge within. As the massive door slowly slid open, Foster and Vox exchanged a look of anticipation and nervous excitement. Whatever lay beyond this threshold would undoubtedly challenge their newfound partnership and the boundaries between their species even further. As they stepped into the vast Zarthon library, Foster and Vox's eyes widened in amazement. Towering shelves lined with crystalline data storage units stretched as far as the eye could see, pulsing with an otherworldly blue light. Dr. Reeves and Dr. Chen immediately set to work, scanning the nearest shelves with their tricorders. The Ferengi engineers, Grok and Lim, hung back, their faces a mix of awe and suspicion. This is incredible, Dr. Reeves breathed, her eyes glued to her tricorder screen. The sheer volume of information stored here. It would take lifetimes to process it all. As the team spread out to explore, Foster noticed Vox lingering near a section of the wall that seemed different from the rest. Her antenna twitched rapidly as she ran her hand along the smooth surface. "Commander," she called, her voice tinged with excitement. "I think there's something here." Foster joined her, placing his hand next to hers on the wall. As their fingers brushed, he felt a jolt of electricity run through him, a lingering effect of their earlier mental link. Vox's antenna quivered in response, and she quickly pulled her hand away. Focusing on the task at hand, Foster examined the section of wall. It was almost imperceptibly different from its surroundings, with a faint pattern etched into its surface. "Good eye, Vox," he said, tracing the pattern with his finger. As he completed the sequence, a low hum filled the air, and the wall slid open, revealing a hidden chamber. The team gathered at the entrance, peering into the dimly lit room beyond. At its center stood a large translucent pod, filled with a softly glowing fluid. Surrounding it were various consoles and unfamiliar devices, all humming with latent energy. Dr. Chen approached one of the consoles, his fingers hovering over the alien controls. "This appears to be some kind of advanced biotechnology," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "If I'm reading this correctly, it's designed to enhance physical attributes and facilitate interspecies compatibility." Foster and Vox exchanged a look, both intrigued and apprehensive. The potential of such technology was immense, but the implications were equally daunting. "We should test it," Vox said suddenly, her voice firm despite the nervous twitch of her antenna. Foster raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? We don't know what effects it might have." Vox nodded, her eyes meeting his with dedication. "If this technology can truly bridge the gap between our species, it's worth the risk. Besides," she added with a hint of a smile, "we've already shared minds. How much stranger can this be?" After a moment's hesitation, Foster nodded. "All right, we'll do it together." As they approached the pod, Grok and Lim erupted in protest. "This is madness," Grok shouted. "You can't seriously consider mingling your biology with a human's?" Vox turned to face her fellow Ferengi, her stance resolute. "We've already crossed lines that were never meant to be crossed. If we're to truly understand the Zarthon legacy, we must be willing to embrace change." Before anyone could raise further objections, Foster and Vox stepped into the pod. The translucent material sealed around them, pressing their bodies close together. Foster could feel Vox's rapid heartbeat against his chest, her antenna brushing against his cheek. Dr. Reeves activated the device, and a pulsating energy field enveloped the pod. Foster gasped as he felt a tingling sensation spread throughout his body. Beside him, Vox let out a small cry, her fingers digging into his arms. The luminescent fluid around them began to swirl, seeping into their skin. Foster watched in amazement as Vox's complexion shifted, taking on a smoother, more human-like texture. He could feel his own body changing, his muscles becoming denser, stronger. As the process reached its peak, Foster's mind was flooded with sensations. He could feel Vox's presence more acutely than ever before, as if their very cells were attuned to each other. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Foster saw a depth of emotion in Vox's gaze that he'd never noticed before. The energy field dissipated, and the pod opened with a soft hiss. Foster and Vox stepped out, their bodies glistening with the luminescent fluid. The rest of the team stared in shock at their transformed appearance. Vox reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing against Foster's arm. A visible shiver ran through her body at the contact, her eyes widening in surprise. Before anyone could comment on their transformation, an alarm blared throughout the structure. The central computer's voice echoed through the chamber, warning of approaching vessels. Captain Parker's voice crackled over their communicators, her tone urgent. "Commander Foster, we've got a situation. A fleet of ships is closing in on your position, both human and Ferengi. Hardline factions from both sides have learned about the Zarthian technology. They're coming to take it by force." Foster's mind raced, quickly assessing their options. He looked at the biotechnology device, then at his transformed body, an idea forming. "We need to level the playing field," he announced, turning to the team. "This device can enhance our physical capabilities. If we all undergo the process, we'll have a better chance of evading the incoming forces and protecting the Zarthan legacy." Dr. Reeves and Dr. Chen nodded eagerly, but Grok and Lim hesitated, their faces twisted with conflict. Vox stepped forward, her newly altered physiology allowing her to move with a grace that seemed almost human. "My friends," she said, addressing the Ferengi engineers, "I know this goes against everything we've been taught, but look at me. I'm still Ferengi, still myself, but I'm also more. We have a chance to grow beyond the limitations of our species. For the sake of our survival and our future, we must take it." Her impassioned words, combined with the undeniable evidence of her transformation, swayed the engineers. One by one, the team members entered the pod, emerging enhanced and unified in a way that transcended their species' differences. As they raced back to their shuttle, Foster could feel the changes in his body: enhanced strength, sharper reflexes, and a heightened awareness of his surroundings. But more than that, he felt a profound connection to his team, human and Ferengi alike. They boarded the shuttle just as the first enemy ships entered the planet's atmosphere. Foster took the helm, with Vox at his side. As their hands touched the controls, he felt a surge of synchronicity, their movements perfectly aligned. "Ready for this?" he asked, glancing at Vox. She nodded, a fierce grin spreading across her face. "Let's show them what we can do." The shuttle lifted off, rocketing towards the stars. As they broke through the atmosphere, they found themselves surrounded by a swarm of hostile fighters. Foster's enhanced reflexes kicked in, his hands flying over the controls with incredible speed and precision. Vox worked in perfect harmony with him, anticipating his every move. The shuttle wove through the barrage of weapons fire, executing maneuvers that would have been impossible just hours before. As they spiraled away from a particularly close blast, Foster caught Vox's eye. In that moment, despite the chaos around them, he felt a surge of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, human and Ferengi, united by the legacy of the Zarthan and the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. The shuttle darted between two larger warships, using their bulk as cover. Foster's mind raced, formulating a plan to break free of the enemy fleet and secure the Zarthan technology. With their enhanced abilities and newfound unity, he knew they stood a chance. But as another volley of weapons fire lit up the space around them, he realized their greatest test was only just beginning. Foster's fingers danced across the shuttle's controls, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to execute maneuvers that defied belief. Beside him, Vox matched his every move, their minds working in perfect synchronicity. The shuttle corkscrewed between two Ferengi marauders, narrowly avoiding a barrage of disruptor fire. Foster felt a surge of exhilaration as they emerged unscathed, Vox's antenna quivering with shared excitement. "We can't keep this up forever," Dr. Reeves called from her station, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Our shields are holding, but barely." Foster's eyes scanned the star-filled viewport, searching for options. His enhanced vision picked out details he'd never noticed before. The subtle shifts in the fabric of space, the faint trails left by passing ships. Suddenly, an idea formed in his mind. "There," he said, pointing to a dense cluster of asteroids drifting in the distance. "We'll use the field to lose them." Vox nodded, understanding his plan without need for explanation. Their hands moved in unison, guiding the shuttle towards the treacherous maze of space rocks. As they entered the asteroid field, Foster felt time slow around him. His enhanced senses processed information at an incredible rate, allowing him to anticipate the movement of each floating boulder. With Vox's assistance, he wove the shuttle through gaps barely wider than their hull, executing maneuvers that would have been impossible just hours ago. Behind them, the pursuing fleet struggled to keep up. Several ships, lacking the enhanced crew's superhuman abilities, collided with asteroids or each other in their attempts to follow. Explosions blossomed in the darkness of space, brief flares of light that highlighted the severity of their situation. "We've bought ourselves some time," Grok announced, his normally gruff voice tinged with awe. "But they're regrouping. We need a more permanent solution." Foster nodded, guiding the shuttle behind a massive asteroid for a moment of cover. As they caught their breath, Dr. Chen made a startling discovery. "Commander," he called, excitement evident in his voice. "Our enhanced physiology, it's allowing us to interface directly with the Zarthon systems on board. There's a hidden feature, a cloaking device." Foster's eyes widened at the implications. "Can you activate it?" Chen nodded, his fingers flying over the console with inhuman speed. A low hum filled the shuttle, and Foster watched in amazement as the ship's exterior seemed to ripple and fade from view. "We're invisible to both visual and sensor detection," Vox confirmed, her antenna twitching as she processed the new information flooding her enhanced senses. With renewed confidence, Foster piloted the now-cloaked shuttle out of the asteroid field. They slipped past the confused enemy fleet undetected, a ghost ship carrying secrets that could reshape the galaxy. But their victory was short-lived. As they put distance between themselves and their pursuers, Foster felt a strange sensation wash over him. His enhanced senses began to dull, his movements becoming less precise. Around him, the rest of the crew showed signs of similar discomfort. "The effects," Dr. Reeves gasped, clutching her head. "They're wearing off." Vox let out a cry of distress, her body shuddering as it began to revert to its original Ferengi state. Her smoother skin roughened, her features shifting back to their familiar configuration. Panic flashed in her eyes as she looked to Foster. Without thinking, Foster reached out to her, their fading mental link allowing him to project feelings of calm and support. "It's okay," he said softly, holding her gaze. "You're still you. We're still us." The intimate moment didn't go unnoticed by the rest of the crew. Grok and Lim exchanged uncomfortable glances, their cultural norms challenged once again by the bond forming between the human commander and their Ferengi colleague. As the last of their enhancements faded, the team found themselves in a precarious position. The cloaking device was still active, but without their augmented abilities, controlling the advanced Zarthon systems proved challenging. Foster's mind raced considering their options. They couldn't run forever, and without their enhanced capabilities, they were vulnerable. There was only one choice. "We need to go back," he announced, his voice firm despite the risks involved. "Back!" Lim exclaimed, his large ears quivering in disbelief. "To the planet? Are you mad?" Foster shook his head. "We need that biotechnology device. It's not just about our survival anymore. This could be the key to lasting peace between humans and Ferengi." Dr. Reeves and Dr. Chen nodded their agreement, but Grok and Lim hesitated, fear evident in their eyes. Vox, still processing the intense physical and emotional changes she'd experienced, surprised everyone with her response. She stood, her posture straight and confident despite her recent ordeal. "He's right," she declared, her voice carrying a newfound strength. "We can't run from this. The Zarthon left us this legacy for a reason. If we turn our backs on it now, we're no better than those who seek to use it for destruction." Her impassioned speech, so unlike the meek Ferengi they'd known before, swayed Grok and Lim. With the team in agreement, Foster carefully adjusted their course, steering the cloaked shuttle back towards the Zarthon outpost. As they approached the planet, their sensors detected increased activity on the surface. Enemy ships had landed, and teams were attempting to breach the outpost's defenses. "We need to move fast," Foster said, his mind already formulating a plan. "We'll use the shuttle's cloak to slip past their forces and re-enter the structure. Our goal is to secure the biotechnology device and any other critical Zarthon tech before it falls into the wrong hands." As the team prepared for their dangerous insertion, Vox approached Foster privately. Her antenna twitched nervously as she struggled to find the right words. "Commander," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "what we experienced, the closeness, the shared thoughts and feelings, I've never—" She trailed off, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't quite name. Foster understood the cultural significance of her confession. He responded with gentle respect. "Human relationships often involve deep emotional and physical connections, Vox. It's natural to feel confused or overwhelmed." Before Vox could respond, the shuttle began its final descent towards the planet's surface. The conversation would have to wait. For now, they had a mission to complete, one that could change the course of human-Ferengi relations forever. As they neared their landing zone, hidden from the invading forces by their cloaking technology, Foster took a deep breath. The challenges ahead were daunting, but he felt a strange sense of calm. Whatever they faced, they would face it together, human and Ferengi, united by shared experience and a common goal. The shuttle touched down silently, its cloaking field shimmering in the alien sunlight. Foster stood addressing his diverse team with quiet grit. "Let's move," he said simply, leading the way towards the airlock. As the door hissed open, revealing the chaotic landscape beyond, Foster knew that their true test was only just beginning. Foster took a deep breath, steeling himself for the dangerous mission ahead. He turned to address his team, his eyes meeting each of theirs in turn. "We all know the risks," he said, his voice low but firm. "But what we're about to do could change everything. Are you ready?" Nods of agreement rippled through the group, a mix of persistence and apprehension on their faces. Foster led the way to the airlock, Vox falling into step beside him. As the door hissed open, they were greeted by the alien landscape, bathed in the eerie light of an unfamiliar sun. Foster scanned the area, his trained eyes picking out potential threats and cover. The air was thick with tension, punctuated by distant explosions and the whine of energy weapons. He motioned for the team to follow, and they moved out in a tight formation, keeping low to the ground. As they approached the outpost, the scale of the invasion became clear. Dozens of ships, both human and Ferengi in design, swarmed the skies. On the ground, mixed squads of troops attempted to breach the facility's defenses. Their efforts met with automated resistance from the ancient Zarthon security systems. "Look," Dr. Chen whispered, pointing towards the outpost's entrance. A shimmering field of energy tendrils had sprung up around the structure, writhing and pulsing with an otherworldly glow. Foster frowned, assessing the new obstacle. That wasn't there before. The outpost must have activated additional defenses. Grok, one of the Ferengi engineers, let out a low whistle. "Those energy tendrils look like they could fry a man in seconds. How are we supposed to get past that?" Foster's mind raced, considering their options. Suddenly, a thought struck him. He turned to Dr. Reeves, excitement in his eyes. "The Zarthon enhancement, could it have left trace elements in our bodies?" Dr. Reeves nodded slowly, catching on to his train of thought. "It's possible. The biotechnology might have altered our cellular structure on a fundamental level." "Then maybe—" Foster trailed off, looking at the energy field with new eyes. Vox stepped forward, her antenna quivering with nervous energy. "I'll test it," she said, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. "Vox, no," Lim protested, reaching out to stop her. "It's too dangerous." But Vox had already started moving towards the energy field. The team watched with breathless expectation as she approached the writhing tendrils. As she got closer, something strange happened. The energy seemed to react to her presence, swirling around her without making contact. Taking a deep breath, Vox pushed forward. For a heart-stopping moment, she disappeared from view, engulfed by the shimmering field. Then suddenly, she was through, standing on the other side unharmed. "It worked," she called back, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and amazement. Emboldened by Vox's success, Foster stepped up next. He felt a tingling sensation as he passed through the field, like static electricity dancing across his skin. In moments, he was standing beside Vox, grinning at the incredulous looks on the faces of the rest of the team. The human scientists quickly followed suit, their curiosity overcoming any lingering fear. But Grok and Lim hesitated, their Ferengi caution warring with the need to complete the mission. Foster turned to them, his expression serious. "I know this goes against everything you've been taught," he said. "But sometimes, progress means taking risks. It's how humans have achieved so much in such a short time." Vox nodded in agreement. "Our people could learn from this," she added, her words carrying the weight of her recent experiences. After a moment's more hesitation, the Ferengi engineers steeled themselves and stepped into the energy field. They emerged on the other side, looking shaken but unharmed. With the team reunited, they approached the outpost's main entrance. Foster and Vox exchanged a glance before placing their hands on the control panel simultaneously. The door responded to their combined biosignatures, sliding open with a soft hum. Inside, they found themselves in a corridor bathed in pulsating blue light. Foster took point, leading them deeper into the facility. The sounds of battle grew louder as they progressed, echoing through the ancient halls. As they neared the central chamber, alarms began to blare. "They've breached the inner defenses," Foster said, quickening his pace. They burst into the chamber housing the biotechnology device, only to find it encased in a protective force field. Holographic warnings flashed around it, their alien symbols indecipherable. Foster approached the console, his fingers flying over the controls as he attempted to deactivate the force field. But the system rejected his efforts, flashing a request for additional authentication. Vox joined him at the console, and together they realized what the system wanted. A holographic interface appeared, presenting a complex three-dimensional puzzle that required simultaneous input from a human and a Ferengi. Without a word, Foster and Vox began to work on the puzzle, their hands moving in perfect synchronization. The rest of the team watched in awe as the two manipulated the holographic elements, their movements becoming more fluid and intuitive with each passing second. Just as they neared completion, the chamber door burst open. A mixed squad of human and Ferengi troops poured in, weapons raised. "Don't move!" the lead soldier shouted, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. Foster and Vox froze, their hands hovering over the final pieces of the puzzle. The team found themselves caught between the advancing enemy forces and the still active force field protecting the biotechnology device. In that moment of tense silence, Foster's mind raced. He knew they had only one chance to turn the tables. His eyes met Vox's, and in that instant, a wordless understanding passed between them. With a synchronized motion, they completed the puzzle. The force field around the biotechnology device shimmered and dissipated. In one fluid movement, Foster snatched the device and activated it, even as the enemy troops opened fire. A wave of energy pulsed outward from the device, enveloping Foster, Vox, and the rest of their team. As the familiar sensation of enhancement washed over them, Foster knew that the real battle was about to begin. The device hummed to life, its alien circuitry pulsing with an otherworldly glow. A wave of energy erupted from its core, enveloping Foster, Vox, and their team in a brilliant aura of shimmering light. The approaching human and Ferengi troops skidded to a halt, their weapons lowering as they gaped at the spectacle before them. For a brief moment, the chamber fell silent, save for the low thrum of energy emanating from the Zarthon device. As the light faded, Foster felt the familiar rush of enhanced capabilities flooding his system. His senses sharpened, his muscles tensed with newfound strength, and his mind raced with heightened clarity. He glanced at Vox, seeing the same transformation reflected in her eyes. Without hesitation, Foster seized the initiative. "Move!" he commanded, his voice carrying an unmistakable air of authority. The team sprang into action, their movements a blur of superhuman speed and precision. Foster led the charge, weaving through the stunned invaders with fluid grace. Vox matched his pace, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to duck and dodge incoming fire with ease. As they neared the chamber's exit, Foster witnessed a remarkable change in Vox. The once timid Ferengi moved with newfound confidence, her small frame belying her incredible strength and agility. In one swift motion, she disarmed an approaching soldier, using his own momentum to flip him over her shoulder. "Impressive," Foster called out, a hint of admiration in his voice. Vox's antenna twitched in what he now recognized as a smile. "I had a good teacher," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. They fought their way through the facility, their enhanced team working in perfect unison. Dr. Reeves and Dr. Chen utilized their augmented intellect to hack security systems, clearing their path. Grok and Lim, their Ferengi caution replaced by enhanced bravery, provided cover fire with uncanny accuracy. As they approached the outpost's main exit, Foster's enhanced senses detected a new threat. He held up a hand, signaling the team to halt. Ahead, a group of heavily armed soldiers stood in formation, their weapons trained on the corridor. "Elite forces," Foster murmured, his mind racing to formulate a plan. At the head of the group stood two imposing figures. One, a human with a scarred face and cold eyes, radiated an aura of fanatical grit. The other, a Ferengi with an ornate headpiece and a sneer of contempt, carried himself with an air of zealous superiority. "Commander Zrath," Vox whispered, identifying the human leader, "and Daimon Krek. They're the most vocal opponents of human-Ferengi cooperation." Foster nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. These were no ordinary soldiers. They represented the extreme factions of both species, united only in their desire to maintain the status quo of distrust and hatred. "We'll have to fight our way through," Foster said, his voice low but resolute. "Are you ready?" Vox met his gaze, her expression mirroring his drive. "Together," she affirmed. With a shared nod, they burst into action. Foster charged forward, his enhanced speed catching the elite soldiers off guard. He engaged Zrath in hand-to-hand combat, his moves a blur of punches and kicks that would have been impossible for a normal human. Vox, inspired by Foster's close-quarters approach, adopted a similar strategy. She ducked under the swing of a Ferengi soldier's energy weapon, closing the distance and striking with precision. Her unorthodox tactics caught her opponents by surprise, their confusion evident as they struggled to counter her human-inspired fighting style. The rest of the team engaged the remaining soldiers, their enhanced abilities evening the odds against the elite forces. The air crackled with energy discharges, and the sound of hand-to-hand combat echoed through the corridor. As the battle raged on, Foster felt the familiar tingling sensation that signaled the waning of their enhancements. He caught Vox's eye, a silent message passing between them. They needed to end this quickly. In that moment of shared understanding, Foster reached out and grasped Vox's hand. The contact sent a jolt of energy through them both, their remaining enhancements seeming to resonate and amplify. Moving as one, they launched into a series of coordinated attacks that defied classification. Foster's human techniques blended seamlessly with Vox's Ferengi maneuvers, creating a hybrid fighting style that their opponents couldn't predict or counter. Zrath and Krek, momentarily stunned by this display of interspecies cooperation, faltered in their defense. Foster and Vox seized the opportunity, launching a final synchronized assault that overwhelmed the two leaders. With a resounding crash, Zrath and Krek fell, their weapons clattering to the ground. The remaining elite soldiers, seeing their leaders defeated, lowered their weapons in surrender. Breathing heavily, Foster surveyed the scene. "Let's move," he ordered, scooping up the Zarthan device. The team quickly made their way to the exit, emerging into the alien sunlight. Their relief was short-lived. Before them stood a mixed force of human and Ferengi troops, weapons at the ready. At their center, Foster recognized the stern visage of Captain Parker and the shrewd features of Damon Brack. The air grew thick with tension as the two sides faced off, fingers hovering over trigger mechanisms. Foster stepped forward, the Zarthan device cradled in his arms, its soft glow a stark contrast to the hostility surrounding them. "Enough," Foster called out, his voice carrying across the assembled forces. "This conflict ends now. We have a chance right here to change everything. He held up the device, its alien design capturing the attention of every soldier present. This technology can bridge the gap between our species. It can give us understanding, empathy, shared experiences. We can use it to create a lasting peace. A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mix of hope, fear, and skepticism. Captain Parker stepped forward, his expression guarded. "What exactly are you proposing, Commander Foster?" Foster took a deep breath, knowing his next words could change the course of human-Ferengi relations forever. "I propose we use this device to enhance representatives from both species. Let them experience what we have. Let them see the potential for cooperation and understanding." The suggestion sent shockwaves through the assembled troops. Some recoiled in horror at the idea, while others leaned forward, intrigued by the possibility. Arguments broke out among the ranks, the air filling with a cacophony of human and Ferengi voices. Sensing the need for a personal perspective, Vox stepped forward. Her antenna quivered with nervous energy, but her voice rang out clear and strong. "I have experienced this enhancement," she declared, her gaze sweeping across the Ferengi contingent. "It has shown me possibilities I never imagined. It challenged everything I thought I knew about humans, about myself, about the very nature of our existence." Her words caused a stir among the Ferengi ranks. Some listened with rapt attention, while others shifted uncomfortably, the implications of her statement challenging their deeply held beliefs. As the debate intensified, Foster realized they stood at a crossroads. The next few moments would be crucial in shaping the future of both species. He exchanged a glance with Vox, drawing strength from their shared experience and the bond they had formed. With a deep breath, Foster prepared to make his final appeal. The fate of human-Ferengi relations hung in the balance, and he knew that his words could tip the scales towards unprecedented unity or drive the wedge of division even deeper. Deeper. With a resolute expression, Foster made his decision. "We've come too far to let this opportunity slip away," he declared, his voice carrying across the tense standoff. Without hesitation, he activated the Zarthon device, its alien energy field expanding to envelop both him and Vox. The assembled troops watched in awe as the pair was bathed in a brilliant, pulsating light. Foster felt the familiar rush of enhancement coursing through his body, but this time, it was different. He sensed a deeper connection forming, not just with the technology, but with Vox herself. As the light faded, gasps rippled through the crowd. Foster's skin now shimmered with a subtle golden hue, reminiscent of Ferengi complexion. Beside him, Vox's features had softened, taking on a more human-like appearance. The transformation was striking yet subtle, a perfect blend of both species. Instinctively, Foster reached out and took Vox's hand. The contact sent a visible shockwave through the Ferengi ranks, their cultural aversion to physical touch challenged by this unprecedented display. Suddenly, Foster felt a surge of information flooding his mind. He glanced at Vox, seeing the same look of wonder in her eyes. Together, they raised their free hands, initiating a telepathic link with the Zarthon device. A massive holographic display materialized above them, visible to all present. It showed images of an ancient, highly advanced civilization, the Zarthons. The hologram depicted their rise to greatness through cooperation and the embrace of diversity. "The Zarthons," Foster explained, his voice resonating with newfound knowledge. "They created this outpost, these trials, to find worthy successors." Vox continued, her words seamlessly complementing Foster's. "They sought those who could unite different species, bridging gaps of mistrust and misunderstanding." The assembled troops watched in fascination as the history of the Zarthons unfolded before them. The display showed how their civilization had flourished by bringing together various alien races, each contributing unique strengths and perspectives. As the hologram faded, a heavy silence fell over the gathering. The implications of what they had just witnessed were profound, challenging long-held beliefs and prejudices on both sides. Captain Parker stepped forward, his expression a mix of awe and persistence. "I volunteer," he announced, his voice steady. "I want to experience this enhancement." A murmur of surprise rippled through the human ranks. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Daimon Brack moved to stand beside Parker. "As do I," the Ferengi leader declared, his voice gruff but resolute. Foster and Vox exchanged a glance, then nodded in unison. They focused their enhanced abilities, expanding the Zarthian device's energy field to encompass the two leaders. The assembled troops watched in stunned silence as Parker and Brack underwent the transformation. When they emerged, both looked subtly altered, carrying traits of each other's species. But the most significant change was in their eyes. A newfound understanding and respect shone in their gazes as they looked at one another. This act of trust from their leaders sparked a chain reaction. Pairs of humans and Ferengi, driven by curiosity and a budding hope, stepped forward to experience the enhancement. Foster and Vox worked in perfect synchronization, adapting the Zarthon device to create a larger field capable of accommodating multiple pairs at once. As more individuals underwent the process, an extraordinary transformation swept through the gathered forces. Enhanced humans and Ferengi began to communicate telepathically, sharing thoughts, memories, and emotions. Years of ingrained prejudice and misunderstanding melted away in the face of this profound connection. Even Zrath and Krek, the hardline leaders who had vehemently opposed cooperation, couldn't ignore the remarkable change taking place around them. With great reluctance, they agreed to undergo the enhancement. Their transformation was the most dramatic of all. They emerged with tears in their eyes, humbled and shaken by their newfound perspective. Amidst the revolutionary atmosphere, Foster turned to Vox. Their enhanced connection allowed for an even deeper understanding between them. "You've shown incredible bravery," Foster said softly, his admiration evident in his voice. "Challenging your cultural norms, embracing new ideas. It's remarkable." Vox's antennae twitched in what Foster now recognized as a smile. "And you," she replied, "have taught me the power of trust and physical closeness. I never imagined such concepts could hold such strength." Their exchange culminated in a moment that sent shockwaves through the crowd. Foster, driven by a mix of emotion and newfound understanding, leaned in and kissed Vox. The Ferengi woman, rather than recoiling, reciprocated the gesture, embracing the human custom with newfound appreciation. The gathered troops, particularly the Ferengi, watched in astonishment. Yet instead of disgust or outrage, the enhanced Ferengi responded with curiosity and even acceptance. They began to understand the human concept of physical intimacy as a form of emotional expression, challenging centuries of cultural taboos. As the alien sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the scene, the once divided forces had transformed into a united group. The Zarthon outpost, as if responding to this fulfillment of its creator's vision, hummed to life. A massive hologram, visible even from orbit, projected into the sky, broadcasting a message of peace and unity to all nearby star systems. Captain Parker and Daimon Brack, their perspectives forever altered, began to draft the first interspecies peace accord. They agreed to share the Zarthane technology and knowledge for the betterment of both civilizations, marking the dawn of a new era of cooperation and scientific advancement. Foster and Vox, recognized as the catalyst for this momentous change, found themselves at the center of attention. As the newly formed Human-Ferengi alliance took shape around them, they realized their journey was a long way to go. In fact, it was just beginning. As the joint Human-Ferengi fleet prepared to depart, carrying news of the alliance back to their respective homeworlds, Foster and Vox stood at the entrance of the Zarthon outpost. They looked out at the transformed crowd, marveling at how far they'd come from their first tense encounter on a distant moon. Vox, still adapting to human displays of affection, tentatively reached for Foster's hand. He gently took it, giving her a reassuring squeeze. As they walked together towards the shuttle that would take them to their new life as ambassadors, Foster couldn't help but wonder about the challenges that lay ahead. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless species and potential conflicts. But as he glanced at Vox, her golden skin glowing in the fading light, he felt a surge of optimism. Together they boarded the shuttle, ready to face whatever the future might hold. As the ship's engines roared to life, Foster knew that their adventure was only just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.